do we mean by agility? Most people, when they talk about agility, mean one thing in particular, and that thing, of course, is speed. People think about being agile as being able to move rapidly, and frankly, for a bank, that's really, really important. You know this. Time to market affects time to profit. And yet, speed is not the whole of agility. It's not sufficient for the cheetah that we see on the screen to be fast. It is necessary for the cheetah to be something more than just fast. For example, there are things, because things change, there are things that you know for certain. You know that you have a team to manage. You know that you have targets to hit. And you know that you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. None of us does. We can think, we can predict, we can forecast. None of us actually knows what's going to happen tomorrow at all. So in addition to speed, what we need, and certainly what the cheetah needs, is agility. The ability to move in more than one dimension rapidly. The ability to respond immediately. And more importantly, the ability to predict and prepare. Because when one is chasing a market at very high speed, it is necessary to be able to predict which way that market will move in order to be as agile as the cheetah in catching a very rapidly changing marketplace. I had a conversation with a business person the other day who was complaining bitterly about all the things that were going on in the world and the impact that this was having on her business. And at one point she said, "Why is this all happening to me?" And I laughed and I said, "It's pretty obvious why this is all happening to you. It's because we live in a world of change. A year ago, nobody had heard of COVID-19. A month ago, Donald Trump was still president of America. Now we have a president-elect that isn't Donald Trump. 1 week ago, BBVA and Sabadell were in the process of merging. As of today, they're not. Things change incredibly rapidly, and operating at scale amidst that kind of complexity and uncertainty means coping with big changes that are unconnected, and speed is not enough to do that. Agility is what's needed. And if somebody asked me the other day, what's the difference between speed and agility? And I pointed out that when we watch something like a cheetah chasing another animal that runs very fast, the other animal is trying to get away. So it jinks and moves and bobs around and changes direction really quickly. I said agility can be summed up as the ability to predict, prepare, and pivot really rapidly. And in a world of change, like the things that we see on the screen, that's what's necessary. So what's happening in retail or business or commercial is completely different from what's happening in corporate or wealth. They're different from each other, every single one. And no person can be the single decision maker in any one of those divisions, let alone for a whole bank. Managers need to let go of the decision-making power. They need to let that decision-making power be devolved nearer to the customer, as close to the customer as possible, so that when the market moves rapidly in all sorts of directions, the people in the bank who are in touch with the market, who are in touch with the customer, are the ones who can make decisions about what needs to be done next, because the customer is expecting that. What's going on? What a great question that is. You don't have time to ask that question when something happens in the marketplace. When it happens, when it moves, it's too late to ask, what's going on. There are three types of banks in the world: banks that make things happen, banks that watch things happen, and banks that wonder what happened. Now, the methodologies of agility, devolving decision making, creating innovation, being flexible, allowing people close to the customer to make decisions. These are methodologies which, like speed, are necessary and not yet sufficient. The way that we make things happen, instead of watching them happen, is using data. Banks collect enormous amounts of data. They use that data tremendously well to serve their customers, and can use it far, far better, because it's not enough to have data. We need to have analytics. We need to use that data to say, what should we be doing next before the customer needs it? Predict and prepare. This is the use of data, and this is where the technologies for agility start to be applied. And it is really important for you as bankers to understand that agile methodologies are not something that's being done to you. It is something that we need to adopt as the bank. Agile technologies are also not something being done to us. They are something that we need to adopt. We need to think in new ways, not just, shall I have a look at this data and see what it tells me about yesterday? Use the analytics to see what it tells you about tomorrow. So be one of those banks that actually makes things happen. So why are we doing all this? Why can't we just relax? Everybody needs a bank. Everybody will always need a bank. Why can't we just carry on doing what we're doing? The point of all of this, the point of all of this business agility, is two things: customer connection and competitive advantage. Agility is a process of devolving the decision making to where the customer is, making that connection with the customer that enables the customer to be embedded in the mind of the bank, and the bank to be embedded in the mind of the customer. Because without the customer, the bank cannot exist. Without the bank, many of the customers will not exist. So we want, as the point of our business agility initiative, create a connection with customers which is unbreakable. I remember when I first joined Santander, I discovered, or I was told, about a term called a rebanking event. I had never heard that term before. And it's simply an event which makes a customer think, I need a new bank. Of course, it might be a domestic business that actually wants to trade internationally. It might be a retail customer that wants to get a mortgage and can't get one from their existing bank. A rebanking event. The point of the customer connection is that you and the customer can learn about rebanking events in that customer's life before they happen. And that is a competitive advantage. So, it's not just the methodology, it's not just the technology, they're just the tools. It's how you use them to make that customer connection that will give you that competitive advantage. So who really cares about agility? Actually, everybody cares about agility. Everybody should care about agility. You all should care. We should care about connecting with our customers. We should care about achieving a competitive advantage. The bank certainly does. The bank wants a competitive advantage in a world that is brutally competitive. Financial services is probably the most competitive marketplace in the world, and it's changing more rapidly than it ever did. Your team cares about agility because they want to succeed. And whether they're in retail or corporate, commercial, wealth, they all demand a different skill set, a different business model, a degree of agility which doesn't come naturally to anybody. We need to learn to be agile. And you care. You as individuals care about agility, because there's a great quote from Michael Crichton, the gentleman who wrote Jurassic Park and several other books. He said, whenever an animal's behavior puts it out of touch with the realities of its existence, it becomes extinct. So for you, as an individual, as a banker, if you lose touch with the realities of the marketplace, it will leave you behind. And if the bank is agile and you are not, there may not be the place for you in the bank that you see. If you are agile and the bank is not, you can create a place within the bank for yourself. So there are three things really to remember here in total. And these three things are, I think these three things are probably the most important things about agility. The first one is purpose. And I know we've just been hearing about purpose. The purpose of agility is competitive advantage. The way we achieve that is that connection with the customer. It is not natural. We have to have that purpose in our mind to drive us to become agile, to do the things which will make us an agile organization. Becoming an agile organization is challenging, time-consuming, disruptive, costly, all of these things, because, and particularly in a large bank, because the bank already has a structure in place, a very powerful structure in place. The bank has a huge regulatory framework around it, which is challenging when it comes to the flexibility necessary for agility. And internally, the bank has teams in risk and compliance who are very often challenged by the principles of agility. And one of the purposes, one of the things that you can do actually to further the purpose of agility is to have conversations with the people in risk or compliance. If you're in risk and compliance, have conversations with people in the rest of the bank who listen to customers all the time. The purpose of agility is to give us a better connection with the customer, which will give us a competitive advantage. And I'll finish off with something I was just going to say. So purpose, first of all. The second dimension of agility is the principles, and these guide our mindset. Now, if you do some research on agile, you will hear all sorts of things about it's a method, and then it became a mindset, and now it's become something else. It is not enough to have a mindset. It's a bit like speed. Again, it's a necessary and not yet sufficient condition. However, it is absolutely necessary to have the mindset for agility. As I mentioned, agility is not something that comes naturally, particularly to management. It's necessary for them to let go of decision making, to devolve that to the front line. That's very, very scary for a management. Very challenging indeed. So the principles of agility, about devolution, about flexibility, about customer orientation, response times, these are the things which guide the mindset with which we approach being agile. And then lastly, the practice, because we can think about agile as much as we like. We can talk about agility for days on end. We are not an agile organization until we behave like an agile organization. We actually need to devolve that decision making to the front line, to the people who talk to the customer. We actually do need to be flexible in the way that we deliver products and services into the marketplace. It's not enough to have good intent or to say good things. Agility is not something that we talk about, it's something that we do. And Peter Drucker, management guru, professor at Harvard for many years, said about entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship is not a character trait, it's a behavior pattern. And the same is true of agility. It's not a character that organizations acquire. Nobody can say, are we agile yet? And have the answer yes, because agility means always being prepared to be able to change in the ways that the market requires that change. The competitive advantage that we seek is not just against other banks. The competitive advantage that the cheetah has is not against other cheetahs. They don't hunt in packs. The competitive advantage that the cheetah has is against the volatility of the behavior of its prey. What we seek for the bank is a competitive advantage over the volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace. And agility is the only antidote to that volatility in the marketplace. That is the end of my little presentation. I hope it's been interesting. I hope it's prompted one or two thoughts for you. And I hope very much that we'll be able to chat about it later on this afternoon. Thank you.